Today we will talk about SHX, XLM, XRP, how they are all connected back to the exact same people, and how they are talking about being partnered up with IBM, XLM, Coinbase, JP Morgan, and Chase. I did want to kick this off with a finding that an account funded by the largest SHX holder, who is, I can't say STs, with a decentralized exchange offer since 2021 in the order book to sell 10 million SHX at $1 USDC, which infers that insiders are almost certain that SHX will hit at least $1 at some point in time. That point in time might be earlier than we might expect. So I want to talk more about the ties that I have found from SHX into Circle, Coinbase, IBM, XLM, JPM, and all of that, but I will concentrate in this video on USDC and Coinbase. So Coinbase just put out an ad about what the value of a penny is. And it's interesting that that just came out when SHX has been at that 1 cent mark now for about a week. And all of this began when crypto banker SHX put out this one tweet that says a lot of interesting things that I have been trying to find more information on. So you've got, I can't say STs, and I'll just call that SHX is built on, can't say STs, so I'll call that XLM. Coinbase is built on XLM. SHX helped build Coinbase. They helped build Flare. They helped build JPM Coin and Onyx. So there's a lot there, but I will concentrate on Coinbase and how that ties into USDC. So again, we have the point that Coinbase is allegedly built on XLM. And I think that that has to do more with Stronghold's USD token and how that ties into XLM, Coinbase, and USDC itself. But I do think that there are some very interesting connections there. And I was able to find a bit more on the follow the money map that was put together by the XX account and utility theory as well. So here we've got SHX, and Sean and Tammy are both connected into XLM and XRP, but you of course have the connection into IBM. And if you go back into USDC, that also ties into Coinbase, and it goes back to SHX in an indirect way on here. And here is a new video with Tammy and Sean talking about how they have been concentrating on certain kinds of partnerships. Now, unfortunately, I can't play this because it has a song in the background and it probably has a copyright, but Tammy explains how they have been concentrating on bank partnerships, payment network partnerships, and merchant partnerships. So one of those partnerships that I've been checking into more, because it has been called out in their welcome email, is Coinbase. And that led into some pretty interesting things. So Coinbase has launched USDC in collaboration with payments technology company Circle. And that was from October 23rd of 2018, which coincidentally in 2018, Stronghold was also officially formed and launched. So we are now pretty well aware of the connections into ACH payments, Ripple, IBM, XLM, FedNow, and we have also been made aware of some very large agreements with enterprises and governments that are still largely under NDAs and they can't be talked about yet. And that comment has been made in an interview, and it came out of Tammy. So while we are talking about governments and SHX and IBM and XLM and USDC, that ties very well into what XLM has done in Ukraine, not only with their humanitarian financial aid, but also because Ukraine is working on a CBDC that runs on the XLM network.
So let's just dive deeper for a moment into Ukraine, because Stellar's played a pivotal role in Ukraine. And I think it'd be really helpful to share with us some of the lessons you've learned, what have been some of the takeaways given a conflict zone where digital assets are playing a very big role.
I think it's really important, and this is one of the, and maybe some in the space would disagree with me, but I look at this kinds of technology as just another rail. And so it should be leveraged by aid organizations in the locations that make the most sense for it. And in this scenario, why Ukraine is a perfect location for it is even prior to the war, we were working with President Zelensky and his administration because they wanted to move to a cashless society. They were actually contemplating, we were working on a pilot with them on a CBDC. They've since transformed that into digitizing deposits and bank deposits. And so they're moving to what's called the TPN, a transparent network, privacy network. But from that standpoint, and there's also a lot of folks there who have smartphones. You can actually use the same technology on a feature phone, but who have smartphones and are comfortable leveraging that. So it was the perfect situation for this kind of technology to be used there by the UNHCR. We were able to start working with the UNHCR in February, right after the conflict started, the war started there, and we actually launched by December, so less than a year, they were able to launch this product into market. The learnings that we had is it's really important, particularly from the UNHCR side, that this not be about crypto. And the truth is, this is not about crypto. This is about blockchain technology and the usefulness of the tech stack itself.
And I do think it's interesting that this whole thing was accomplished in under a year. I don't think that that was an accident. I think that there was a lot of prior planning and even prior information that was known in order to take advantage of a crisis. And that shouldn't really surprise anyone, because we do hear that a crisis is a perfect opportunity to introduce all kinds of huge changes that wouldn't be broadly accepted by people if there wasn't an alleged problem in order to try to quickly solve. And I have talked about the Ukraine pilot with USDC and XLM and how that looks very comparable to what a CBDC program would actually look like. So you've got financial institutions, and then you have a network and a token that would work like a CBDC that would get sent out to individual people. And while we are talking about governments again, it's a good way to remind everybody that SHX is highly involved with governments right now, primarily in the US, because they are trying to essentially tokenize the ACH payments network, which is now worth just over 80 trillion per year, because that was actually updated for 2023, and it came in as just over 80 trillion transacted in only 1 year. That is the volume of one of the niche applications that SHX is concentrating on. And it again shows a connection to JPM here, because they are involved in the Payments Innovation Alliance. The Federal Reserve Boston is pretty tight with USDC. And it's interesting because it also is a way to connect XLM back into the World Economic Forum, where XRP is also highly connected to. So this is actually from the World Bank, but it does call out Stronghold as one of the crypto projects that are actually on their quote unquote approved sheet. And here is a little bit more about how Coinbase, Circle, Ripple, and XLM have all been heavily involved in the World Economic Forum.
Now, here's a rundown of what happens from a crypto person that's actually been inside Davos during WEF. So first of all, over this year, the main players that we're seeing from the crypto space are Coinbase, Circle, Ripple, and Hedera and Stellar.
And it's all highly interesting because all of them get tied back together over and over again. You've got the fact that XRP and XLM essentially come out of the people who created PayPal. Then you've got SHX coming in, who was co-founded by an individual from XLM and one other individual who actually worked on XLM and on XRP. So I don't think that these things are a coincidence. And this right here ties USDC, XRP, and Coinbase together, which is, in my opinion, important here because Ripple is one of the primary investors in SHX. And it begins to also introduce that USDC is highly connected into BlackRock, and Coinbase is the custodian for the Bitcoin in BlackRock's ETF. This is from 2023, and it is talking about how Coinbase integrates with USDC on XLM. And this is the link to the XLM site that actually explains it here. And in 2023, Coinbase purchased a share in USDC operator Circle. So it just ties them together more and more, which all go back to XLM, XRP, and SHX. They actually ended up owning 3.5% as called out here, which in terms of ownership in this large of a company is a pretty huge percentage. I talked about the Ukraine thing with USDC and XLM and how that could translate over into how a CBDC could work on XLM, like has been worked on in Ukraine. So a lot of people don't really think of CBDCs and XLM. A lot of people primarily talk about XRP and even a lot of quant and some XDC as well. But this goes all of the way back to 2021, and it has ties into the Bank of International Settlements, but it is also tied into the World Bank and the UN. And we just talked about how SHX and XLM are connected into the World Bank and the UN. The USDC is a possible candidate for the digital dollar. And don't forget, Paysend's IMF SDR, called the XDR, is built on XLM. And that right there is an entirely different topic all on its own. And Ripple and XRP also have a lot of ties into the IMF. There's a lot of talk here in the US about how CBDCs won't get passed, and that might be true, but they might still exist just in a different kind of a way. I think that CBDCs might not be accepted or approved if they're created by the government or the private corporation that is the US Federal Reserve, but there might be more acceptance of a private entity created product. And one of those that has gotten heavily involved in politics is USDC, and it is primarily operating on XLM. It just so happens that it is basically BlackRock. And here is an old graphic by XX, and it is talking about all of the connections between Coinbase, Circle, USDC, and of course you have one of the very large investors in all of this, which is BlackRock, and they are heavily tied into USDC and Coinbase. USDC is essentially BlackRock's crypto cash. Coinbase is BlackRock's custody, and ETFs are BlackRock's derivatives. I have said in the past that BlackRock is effectively wanting to use USDC as a way to operate like their own version of the Federal Reserve, where they are able to lend out assets and then get paid back with interest, just like how the Federal Reserve operates. So don't trust theirs, but trust ours. Tether, not owned by BlackRock, but USDC is. And this is coming off of Coinbase because they were offering to convert USDT over to USDC without any fees in order to get people using USDC.